Hey guys, welcome back to another daily devotional. I'm glad you're with me as we are now in Matthew chapter 23. My verses for today are verses 5 through 12. I'm going to put verse 4 in there because it helps give us some context. But I do want to help give us context to understand what's going on in chapter 23. We have to understand, Jesus is going to be giving pronouncements of woe, 7 woes, to the scribes and the Pharisees. Now, in my past devotionals, I've talked about this, right? There are oracles of weal, and those are pronouncements of blessings, right? Like we see those in Matthew 5 in the Sermon on the Mount when Jesus said, "Blessed are those who are poor in spirit, blessed are those who mourn." Those are pronouncements of blessings. And then there's oracles of woe, and these are the most serious kind. They're pronouncements of judgment, and they're terrifying. Right? And that's exactly what Jesus is going to be doing here. He's going to be giving pronouncements of judgment against the scribes and Pharisees. But the section we're looking at today is he's giving us context as to why. So I'm going to kind of go verse by verse, but we're going to start in verse 4. And Jesus is talking about the scribes and Pharisees. And so he says, "They tie up heavy burdens hard to bear and lay them on people's shoulders, but they themselves are not willing to move them with their finger." So all the law we see in the Old Testament, including all the traditions of man that have been placed on the back of Israel, they're putting them on everybody else, but they themselves are unwilling to do them. Verse 5 says, "They do all their deeds to be seen by others, for they make their phylacteries broad and their fringes long, and they love the place of honor at feasts and the best seats in the synagogues, and greetings in the marketplaces and being called rabbi by others, but you are not to be called rabbi, for you have one teacher, and you are all brothers." I want to stop there real quick. Jesus is telling the disciples they shouldn't try and gain authority over one another as teachers, since Jesus ultimately is their teacher and master. Right? In verse 9 it says, "And call no man your father on earth, for you have one Father who is in heaven. Neither be called instructors, for you have one instructor, the Christ." Now, to be clear, Jesus is not forbidding the use of titles like teacher or doctor or father for all time and in every circumstance. But what he's doing is he's prohibiting the disciples from using these terms, again, context, in the way that the Pharisees used them, in a spirit that wrongly exalted the leaders and just reinforced pride. In verse 11, it says, "The greatest among you shall be your servant. Whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted." So, the truth be told, I want to look at verse 5. The devotional today and the application, it's actually really straightforward and pretty simple. Verse 5 says they do all their deeds to be seen by others. And, all throughout Scripture we see it says that God tests the heart of man. I just happen to be in 1 Chronicles 28, and in verse 9 it says, "And you, Solomon, my son, know the God of your father and serve him with a whole heart and with a willing mind, for the Lord searches all hearts and understands every plan and thought." So when Scripture says that God tests the heart of man, a better way to maybe understand is God tests the motives of man. So in verse 5, they do all their deeds to be seen by others. So that's the question I want to ask you. When you do your deeds, in terms of wanting to glorify God and do things for the kingdom, do you do them because you want others to see them, or because you are purely concerned with God being glorified? And if we're going to be honest, this is something all of us have struggled with. We all want to be seen, all of us. We want people to know our heart and that we do love the Lord, but sometimes that can start to taint the motive to a place where it becomes sinful. And so, Ephesians, I think of the fact that even the good works that we walk in, this is so wonderful because God gets the glory, even the good works. After he does the work of saving us, then he says all the good works that we're to work at, that we are to walk in, he has planned before time was time for us to walk in. So I just want to encourage you today, as you continue to serve, work for the kingdom, be aware of your motive and make sure it's a motive that's not concerned like the Pharisees that others seen the deeds, but that you're doing it just to glorify God. All right, guys, I love you. Have a wonderful week, and we'll talk to you soon.